All right, everyone, it's time for another Capes and Lunatics Creator Corner. Yeah, no theme music, because we're jumping right in because we are honored and privileged to be talking to a legend of comics, TV, basically sci-fi in general, Mr. Peter David. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Happy to do it.
Yes, and not just sci-fi. This gentleman has written pretty much everything, including fantasy political satire with the Camelot Papers.
Yes, true.
Yes, I just I saw that when I went to your website today and was very excited by that.
Okay.
Well, you know, I'm easily
amused. The Camelot Papers actually had a fairly interesting origin. I was thinking one day about the fact that Bill Clinton's presidency got derailed because of a sex scandal. And then I thought about it some more and realized that King Arthur's kingship also got derailed by a sex scandal. And isn't it interesting how little things have changed in 1,000 years? And the more I thought about it, the more I felt that there would be a good book there. So what I came up with was the notion of doing an Arthurian novel, but taking modern day politicians and transplanting them into Arthurian counterparts. I mean, they still have all the Arthurian names, Arthur, Guinevere, all of that, but their personalities are derived from their modern day counterparts. So, for instance, King Arthur is George W. Bush, the son of a previous ruler, George W. Bush or Uther. Guinevere is Hillary. Bill Clinton is Lancelot. Galahad is Obama, and Merlin is Karl Rove. So that is essentially where the Camelot Papers come from. And the whole story is told from the point of view of a young girl who has the rather unique ability at the time of being able to read and write. And she's a slave girl, and she gets pulled into the whole story.
Yeah, you know, and for what it's worth, what I will tell you is, you know, because I went to your website and I started reading it. I started reading the preview for it, and immediately I'm thinking, oh yes, idiot president. You know, obviously this was a recent thing, and I'm like, oh no, this is very much the cyclical nature of politics. Oh.
Very much so.
Yeah, and so yes, I'm very excited about that piece. I'm very excited about lots of things you have done and will be doing, I'm sure.
Thank you.
No, not a problem, sir. You know, I have to be honest with you. You know, so let me open up with the tough questions.
Okay.
Sometimes you got to just hit it hard. So you are tied to two of, at least for me as a nerd, the biggest. Most controversial retcons in comic book history.
I am. Okay.
Okay. Now, so the first one that I want to get to, because it is topical, because the Inhumans are on TV and the Inhumans are big, is you created a retcon that I thought was beautifully done of the Lockjaw concept as to whether or not Lockjaw is an Inhuman or is it just a gigantic space dog?
Right.
And you did a very nice job on it. Two things. Now, the story that we've heard is that you were told you have to write this right.
I wasn't told I had to. It was requested by both the editors and by, if I'm recalling correctly, Kurt Busiek. Why Kurt entered into it, I have no idea, so I won't swear to that. But their attitude was they hated that storyline because the Inhumans had treated Lockjaw like a dog for a couple of decades. If we change it into the concept that he was a sentient Inhuman rather than a transformed dog, then it transformed the Inhumans into a whole bunch of huge dicks because they talked to him like a dog. They treated him like a dog, which is fine if he's a dog. If he's a sentient Inhuman, It makes absolutely no sense, and they're a bunch of patronizing assholes. So, and this is me watching my language. So they came to me and they said, could you do something about it? Could you come up with some sort of retcon to erase this? And I said, okay, because I didn't have any really strong feelings about it one way or the other. So I came up with the simplest and quite possibly dumbest retcon that I possibly could, and I tossed it in there, and it seems to have stuck. And many people were under the impression that I did it because of ill will towards John Byrne. No, it had absolutely nothing to do with John. It had to do with that I was requested to do it, and I just did it in the simplest way that I could without taking any shots at the guy who came up with it. I was just like, okay, well, this is what we'll do, and he's now a dog again. Is everybody happy? And since Marvel has since then made absolutely no attempt to go back to saying that, no, he can talk, everyone seems to have accepted it, which is fine by me.
Okay. So here's the crux of my question for you.
Okay.
So as the writer, in your mind, because you did write it in such a way, and I've read that you've said that it was written in such a way that people that want to discount the retcon can, people who want to embrace the retcon can.
Yeah.
In your mind, is Lockjaw just a giant space dog, or is he the secret eldest son of the Blackagon family who wanted in his Terrigenesis to just not be king and became a dog as a result?
No, he's a dog. I mean, I embraced the retcon as well. I mean, I tended to agree once I gave it some thought that it did really make the Inhumans seem like a bunch of dicks because they all treated him just like a dog. And the only way to salvage that treatment was to say, yes, he's a dog, and pursue it no further than that. And like I said, I don't think anyone's tried to switch it back since then. And if the retcon's lasting for, 20 years, then I would have to pretty much say it's taken hold.
Okay. Fair enough. And that is the stance in the current MC cinematic universe. So, So obviously it is continued forth.
Yes.
So now the other item, which might be a little more controversial.
Hold on a second. I'll be right back.
Okay. No problem. Okay. See, I went for the hard questions right away, and now he has to
scared him off, Charlie.
Dang it! Darn my nerdy nature.
Here it comes.
Oh, there we go. Hey, it's Lockjaw. Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that some months ago I put on Twitter, we need a plush Lockjaw. And obviously Marvel Comics totally bought into it. And I picked up this guy at the New York Comic Con.
Awesome.
Very happy to do it too.
Yes. So now the other one, which I believe, if I understand it correctly, was your actual decision, was the decision that the Hulk can now breathe underwater. And I guess what my question is aside from just the obvious point that, the idea that he can hold his breath just forever because he has the lung capacity of a whale when he's physically much smaller than a whale, is adequately ridiculous. What made you decide that he should be able to breathe underwater rather than just that his healing factor just prevented him from dying of asphyxiation?
That's a very good question. No idea.
I love that answer.
My instinct is that I had the opening of the 4-part Hulk story that had him winding up on a desert island that was a kind of, and wound up running into Nightmare and all that kind of stuff. And I had this whole opening in which the Hulk is basically walk, and it's possible that they came up with it at that point just to justify why he was walking underwater rather than actually having to hold his breath. That's possible, but I have no recollection beyond that. Sorry.
That's fine.
You got to understand, I've been writing comic books for 30 years. And the ideas do not stay in my head once I've written it down. I get it out of my head and put it on paper, and then I'm on to the next thing. Whenever I need to check something that I've written, I will generally go on Twitter or on my website and say, hey, guys, when and where did this happen and why? And I will then get something like 18 answers as to when and why this happened. But there will be things that will be established that I have no recollection whatsoever of coming up with. And I've actually disappointed a number of fans who say, I wanted to ask you for years, what happened when this and this and this? And I'm going, dude, I don't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. Do you seriously think that I remember what I wrote in a comic book 25 years ago? I'm 61. I'm lucky if I remember which socks to put on. And all I have are white gym socks. So, so I have absolutely no recollection of the certainty of it. And indeed, if all of a sudden somebody came forward and said, no, I'm the one who came up with that idea, I'd go, fine, you came up with the idea. I am not. There are some ideas that I remember very clearly. I mean, I remember coming up with ripping out Logan's adamantium. I remember that extremely distinctly. But the other stuff, I remember how we came up with that Ned Leeds was going to be the Hobgoblin, and I wrote that cockamamie story. But the Hulk breathing underwater, I got nothing.
All right.
And since we mentioned X-Men and Spider-Man, Phil, to you.
First, it's kind of a Spider-Man, but a whole question. Your Hulk run, Mr. David, is my favorite yet.
Mr. David, seriously?
Well,
sure.
All right, Peter.
Peter's fine, yeah.
You're the reason Grey Hulk is my favorite Hulk, and just I love the Vegas storyline. And now you're writing Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider in Las Vegas. What is your obsession with Las Vegas?
The Las Vegas one where he's a leg breaker seemed natural to me. I wanted a change of venue. The thing was that the typical storylines were always that Bruce Banner was trying to put his life together and suddenly the Hulk would show up and screw everything up. And I thought it'd be interesting to do a story where the Hulk had actually put his life together and Banner shows up to screw it up, to reverse the classic Hulk formula. And I thought to myself, where could the Hulk put together a life? And I thought, well, maybe he's a leg breaker. Where would he need a leg breaker? Casino. Why the hell not? The current thing with Ben Reilly in Las Vegas, that was editorially dictated. Okay. They said, we're going to be setting it in Las Vegas. And I was like, okay, I got no problem with that.
Now, that actually raises an interesting question for me. Because this was the question I was going to ask about Las Vegas. So they move it to Las Vegas. You're writing it in Las Vegas. Do they tell you at the start of the run, by the way, we're setting it in Las Vegas because we're blowing up Las Vegas in a couple weeks?
No, I had no idea. I had absolutely... Marvel never tells me this crap ahead of time. I mean, I still remember when fans tweeted at me, so how is Siren going to react to the death of Banshee? And I'm going, the death of what now? Who? What? We killed off Banshee? And I contacted the editors, and they're going, oh, yeah, we killed off Banshee. I said, is this permanent? And they went, yeah, it's permanent. I'm going, and you didn't tell me this? The reason that so I had like 3 or 4 months before I could have her react to it. Because, I'd already written the scripts. That's why I came up with the entire concept that she absolutely refused to mourn her father because she was sure that he was going to come back from the dead. It explained why for 3 months she didn't visibly react in the pages of X Factor. Finally, when I wrote my first script after I'd learned it, I had them going, Siren, why haven't you been reacting to your father being dead? And she's going, oh, he's not dead. I don't believe it. And, and it actually resulted in a really good storyline for Siren. But Jesus Christ, no, they never tell me this stuff ahead of time. I mean, that's why in issue 8, I think it's issue 8, we had the things saying, we started with the stories saying, before Secret Empire. And then it's like, after Secret Empire, because I had just found out about Secret Empire at the point where I was writing that story. So I immediately worked it into the comic books. But you can always tell when I'm reacting to something really big when I found out about it, because that's when I started working stuff into the story. Now, I will say that we are working on a storyline that's going to be fairly big, and will be taking up the series beginning around issue 14. But they actually gave me advance notice on that one. There's going to be a big mega story that's going to be reflected in Las Vegas. I can't give you any more details than that. And Spider-Man and Scarlet Spider is going to be squarely in the middle of that, unless they've announced it. Who knows? Nobody tells me these things.
Not that I know of. Oh, I love that character. But
you heard it here first on Cape Lunatics.
Yes,
you heard a veiled reference to something that will be coming up. Yeah, that's
as good as we get. It's close enough for us.
A rumor shrouded in innuendo, but
okay.
And also, like I said, I associate you with the Hulk whenever I hear your name. I love your 12-year run. I love both Captain Marvel series you wrote. Rick Jones and Marlo Chandler, are those your favorite characters? Because they seem to come up in every series you write.
Well, we killed off Rick, so thanks, guys.
Well,
but did they tell you beforehand?
No. Of course not. Why would they?
Charlie, if you've been paying attention, they don't tell them anything.
Dude, they didn't tell me they were killing off Bruce Banner until after he was dead, you know. We're killing Bruce? Thanks, guys.
Oh, geez.
But I didn't really bring in Marlo. I brought Death, who was essentially disguised as Marlo. But no, Marlo wasn't in the comic, but I thought it would be a nice touch and a nice nod back to the characters that I created to bring Death in posing as Marlo, because why the hell not? If one thing, it was certainly less specific than having Death walk around, because she'd be spotted pretty easily.
I love the whole thing with Death and her just be like, hey, Thanos tries too hard and Bull's just crazy, and it was that was such a great issue. I
would actually love to do a 4-issue series with Death, in which she hangs out in an apartment with her sister, Life. Who, oh no, I refer to. Death does make a cameo appearance in an upcoming issue, and she makes reference to her sister, Life. So I would love to do a limited series called Life and Death, in which they're hanging out in this apartment in Greenwich Village. And, there's all this stuff going on. I mean, Thanos shows up, and people are freaking out, and he just wants to go out on a date with her. And the Avengers all show up, and they're going, what is your plan, Thanos? And Thanos is going, I just want to go out on a date with my girlfriend, okay? Leave me the hell alone. And, it would be a great story, and she'd wind up going out to his Chinese restaurant that Wong owns, and it would just be, a lot of fun. I'm trying to convince Marvel to let me do a 4-issue series called Life and Death. So if you all want to see it, write in.
Nice. But now
we're like all 4 issues. At least
yes.
One copy of each, yeah.
But we were talking about Scarlet Spider, but I mean, you've written Peter Parker many times, and you created Spider-Man 2099. Are you just? Do they come to you because are you one of the go-to Spider-Man guys, or do you just love the character so much, or?
I honestly don't know. I mean, Spider-Man 2099 wasn't just me. They approached a number of different writers about creating the character. All we knew about him was that he was going to be working for a company called Alchemax in the year 2099. And we were all supposed to come up with our own versions of what he would be like. And what I did was I said, I want to zig everywhere that Stan and Steve zagged in creating Spider-Man. So the first thing we're going to do is have him not be a descendant of Peter Parker, because that's way too obvious. Peter Parker was a teenager. Miguel would be in his early 20s. Peter Parker was a wasp. Peter would be of mixed breed. He would be half Mexican, half Irish, because I picked two backgrounds that I thought could not remotely go together. Peter Parker was an orphan. Miguel would have a mother. Peter was an only child. Miguel would have a brother. Peter had no idea how to handle women. Miguel would have a fiancée. Spider-Man basically hung to the wall through magic or advanced static electricity. I had Miguel with talons on his fingers. That's how he hooked. Peter Parker created the web shooter. Miguel would have biological spinnerets in his forearms, which is why it broke me up when fans went nuts over Tobey Maguire having the spinnerets in his arms. And I'm going, my God, that's so stupid. And I'm going, guys, 10 years ago, I came up with that. Did that 10 years ago. Talons on his fingers. I did that. Well, I sent in the story. I sent in my outline. And I got a call a week later from Marvel Editorial going, we love what you've come up with. First off, you're the only writer who didn't have him be a descendant of Peter Parker. And would you be interested in writing the comic book series? And I said, sure. I mean, I still remember the first meet and greet for all the creative teams where I sat there with Rick Leonardi and told him what I wanted on the costume. And Rick sat there and designed the Spider-Man 2099 costume. And I came up with stuff and he improved on what I came up with, all this kind of stuff. And it was just really an incredibly exciting editorial experience. I have no idea why they keep putting me on Spider-Man. I then have no idea why they keep canceling my books about Spider-Man. But, I guess canceling is a form of love. I don't know.
But you even gave Peter Parker those organic spinnerets. What is it? The other storyline, and that was going to be my question.
No, I did not do that.
Oh no, okay. I thought you were.
No, I get credited with stuff that I didn't do all the time.
Okay.
People still ask me, "How did you come up with the idea of changing the Hulk back to gray?" And I go, "I didn't." Al Milgrom did that. I never did that. He was gray when I first started on the book.
But you took it and run with it. But no, I mean, you spend so much time with Spider-Man. Do you like Peter Parker as a single guy, or did you like the marriage better? I personally liked him married better.
Yeah, I did too. I would never have broken them up. But then again, I'm not paid the big money to make these decisions. I mean, it was Joe's call. And so, okay, they got broken up because Aunt May, who's like 187, couldn't die. All right, fine, whatever.
But she's gotten younger now.
Yeah, well,
so it's like, no,
Yeah, now she's Marissa Tomei. Holy crap.
Exactly. It's amazing how that sliding time is now working both ways. So,
yeah, well, I mean, when you think about it, it really does make more sense that Marissa Tomei would be the age of Aunt May rather than that Aunt May's an incredibly old woman with white hair. I mean, I had aunts and they were never, their hair wasn't gray. My daughter Shayna, and my daughters Shayna, Gwen, Ariel, Caroline, they have an Aunt Beth, and Aunt Beth is in her 40s and has, I think, maybe 50s, whatever. She's in her 40s and she has brown hair. So, the aunts in most of our worlds really look much more like Marissa Tomei than they do the ancient crone that was created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. So I really don't have a problem with that she was Sally Field and she was Marissa Tomei.
But I also loved your run on Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, or as you had every character in that book call him, that FN Spider-Man.
I got to tell you something. Not every person, just J. Jonah Jameson.
Yes.
In my last issue, I had Spider-Man swap a bottle of wine and leave a note saying, "Thanks for the wine, you're FNSM." And I had Jonah's last line being, "I hate that effing Spider-Man." And my editor came back and he said, "We're never going to get that into print." And I said, "Why not?" First off, the name of the book is Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. He has abbreviated himself time and time again as FNSM. I didn't come up with that. Stan freaking Lee came up with that. So why not have him say that FN Spider-Man? the fact that if you say it out loud, it means something completely different is certainly not my problem. And he said, well, I'll run it up the ladder and see if we can get it in. And to my complete shock, in the last issue, when it's all print, I flipped to the last page, and there's Jonah Jameson saying, I hate that effing Spider-Man. Thank you, Marvel Comics.
That was the best. That was the best ending of that series. But I love that series. It was that time like during Civil War when the whole world knew who Peter Parker was. So, he had to come. Jameson knows who he was. Flash Thompson.
I gotta say, that series was such a son of a bitch to write. Because I couldn't initiate anything. I had to constantly be reacting to all the stuff that was happening in the other Spider-Man books. Furthermore, any villain that I wanted to write, they would either say, no, Joe's using him, or no, Roberto's using him. So I had to deal with the villains that nobody else wanted, and I had to constantly tailor the story to accommodate what the hell was happening in the other Spider-Man books. So it was an incessant challenge to write that series.
But the series still came across great. But I think during your first run, what was it, writing Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man? You wrote The Death of Jean DeWolf. I love that story.
Thank you.
That's the one with Daredevil. If no one knows it, that's when Daredevil figures out Peter Parker is Spider-Man, because why wouldn't he?
Why wouldn't he? Right. If he's near Peter Parker, he remembers heartbeats, he's going to go, oh my God, this is Spider-Man right here. So that seemed to make eminent sense to me. I think they've now retconned it so he doesn't know.
Yeah.
But even so, I thought it was, a reasonable development to have happen.
And they basically built the whole Venom thing off of that story, because
that's correct.
The whole Sin Eater thing, the guy came forward, and that's the story Eddie Brock reported, but it turned out to be the wrong guy.
Yeah, people all had these arguments about who created Venom.
Oh, right there.
And all I can tell you is that David Michelinie came up to me at a Spider Writers meeting and said, I'm doing this character called Venom, and I want him to tie into the death of Jean DeWolf. And he ran the whole Eddie Brock storyline past me. And I said, wow, that sounds really exciting. And he asked my permission. And I'm going, it's not an issue with me, Dave. Go for it. Absolutely go for it. So, yes, Todd McFarlane added a tongue. That's nice. But Venom's entire origin and character and development and backstory was all told to me by Dave Michelinie months before he showed up in the comic book. So I'm sorry, guys. Dave Michelinie created Venom. Todd McFarlane created a tongue.
That is so funny that he just came to you asking for your daughter's hand in marriage or something. He's like, can I use this story?
What?
I said, it's like you're asking for your daughter's hand in marriage.
Oh,
it's that'd be just a story.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I know one thing I did want to ask you, or we'll kind of switch gears here.
Okay.
Your time on Aquaman, you're the one who created the bearded Aquaman.
Yes.
You basically created the version that's going to show up in Justice League. Is there something?
I love that. I love that when Zack Snyder put that picture up on Twitter, because all the modern day fans are going, what the hell? That's not Aquaman. That doesn't look anything like him. And all of the older fans are going, no, that's Peter David's Aquaman.
That's right.
I love the notion that you can take a look at a character and go, that's Peter David's. He did that. It's nice to have that kind of continuity on the character. And I'm incredibly grateful that he's showing up in movies, because all of a sudden DC is now suddenly publishing all the Aquaman stuff that I wrote that they haven't been publishing for years. Hold on a minute.
Oh, he's getting some nice bonuses for Christmas. Yeah.
Look at that.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah, I just got these in the mail today. Well, actually, the reason I just got them today, they were actually shipped out 2 weeks ago, but they went to David Peterson in Michigan. And David came over to me at the New York Comic Con and said, were you expecting some Aquaman books? And I went, what? And he said, I got this box of Aquaman books. It was you. And he described it to me. And I went, oh, my God, that's the Atlantis Chronicles. And he said, yeah, they shipped it to me. Thanks a lot, shipping company. But they finally put the Atlantis Chronicles, which is some of my all-time favorite work, into print. In January, I think it is, they're going to be issuing the first of a trade paperback collection of my run on the Aquaman comic book series. They'll be collecting Time and Tide, 4 issues, and then the first 8 issues of my run on Aquaman. And I'm writing a forward for them. Actually, I've already written it. So, I'm very pleased about that. And yeah, I was really jazzed that they decided to take my version of Aquaman and make him the badass Aquaman in the Justice League. I'm praying that he loses his hand in the Aquaman solo movie and winds up getting a harpoon, because how freaking badass would that be?
That's going to be my next question. What do you want to see from the character in the movies? I guess we know what to.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that. I want him to lose a hand and have it replaced with a harpoon, not a hook. Why in God's name people keep saying it's a hook? I cannot even begin to fathom. It's a freaking harpoon, guys. But I would totally love if that happens in the Aquaman movie. That would kick ass. And my name better be on the end credit thing. I'm telling you that.
Yes.
Where they put the names of people involved. Yes. My name better freaking be in there, because that's Peter David's Aquaman. Twitter agrees. And when Twitter agrees on something, it must be right.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to watch, because I always watch the end of it credits. And if it's not there, we're going to start a hashtag Bad Justice League.
Okay. Why Justice League? It's the Aquaman movie.
The Aquaman movie.
Hashtag
the Justice League first.
Hashtag where's Peter's Aqua credit? That
there we go. Done and done, sir. So just to get away from comic books, which is a huge aspect of everything, but you've done so much more.
I have.
I actually want to talk about your work with Star Trek novels.
Okay.
And specifically, because you have made some statements about the Orville, your interest in possibly, hey, if anyone wants me to write a novelization of the Orville, you're down for it.
Yeah.
I loved Strike Zone, which was I believe if Wikipedia is correct, your first Star Trek novel.
That is correct.
I do think. I mean, you've written some amazing Star Trek novels just in general, but that was the first one I read of yours, and it really did hit me so strongly. And not the least of which is the fact that I think it does tie into the Orville in a very interesting way, in the fact that you really wanted to make the characters human. Yes. Because to me, what is interesting about the Orville is that it is just a standard Star Trek show, but with really human characters.
I would say it's essentially the Orville is a standard office comedy, a story that's set in a place of business, and making it no different than, The Office in that sense. We're seeing people engage in standard office BS being tossed around all that time, when McFarlane is having the characters make jokes, it's almost never in really dire situations. When things are suddenly really dire, they are generally all business because their lives are on the line. Most of the jokes happen when they're either off duty or when nothing particularly dangerous is happening, which, when you think about it, really makes a hell of a lot of sense. I've never been on a Navy vessel when things aren't happening, or even when things are happening when you get onto it. But I would imagine they're much more official in their interaction. But I don't know, maybe not. Maybe they joke around about stuff as well, just to keep their minds engaged. I have to say, I mean, whenever I'm watching the Orville, I really feel like I'm watching Star Trek from back in the 1960s. which is fine because generally nowadays when you watch Star Trek, you're sure not watching Star Trek from back in the 1960s. You're watching a show that has evolved over decades because they don't want to keep doing the same thing that they did back in 1966, which makes sense. I mean, because if they were just doing the exact same show, people would be saying, we've seen this. The problem is that Star Trek has at this point evolved so far away from what its origins are that people are going, oh, but gee, I really liked it when it was just Kirk and Spock and McCoy and they just had adventures and there wasn't all this overarching stuff. And now they're doing Star Trek Discovery, or STD as we like to call it. And, I mean, where the sets are so dark that I have to lean forward to try and see what's going on. And they've introduced something called Spore Drive, whatever the hell that is. I mean, are they flying on mushrooms? Really? Doesn't get much more 1960s than that. And they have a Vulcan-esque first officer who then commits treason in her first episode. I mean, what the hell? I have no idea what in God's name they're doing in Discovery. I watched the first episode on CBS and was supremely underwhelmed and felt no urge whatsoever to pick up their dumbass computer system to keep watching it. Because if you're going to create a system that I have to pay for to watch, you better have a buttload of stuff on there. You better be like freaking Netflix, because that's who you're competing against. That's your competition. You have to say, what can we do that's better than Netflix? And in terms of new material, they're offering The Good Fight, which I've heard good things about, but I don't want to pay money every month just to see that. And Star Trek Discovery, which, by the way, they're not even putting up the entire series this year. They're only putting up the first half of the series, and you have to wait for the rest of it until next year, for which you get to pay $6.99 a month, and you get to watch commercials. Screw you guys. If it comes out on DVD, I'll get it on DVD. I don't want to pay $11 a month so I can watch 2 series, one of which won't even be out until next year. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's just not worth it. But the Orville is a perfectly entertaining Star Trek-esque series. The writing is becoming more and more sophisticated. In the last 2 episodes, there have been 0 dick jokes, which I was very happy about, because how many do you really need? The most recent episode was incredibly intense for an episode of the Orville. So, yeah, I'm enjoying the Orville immensely. And when I put that out on Twitter, hey, I'd be happy to write Orville novels, I wasn't really thinking about anything. I just thought, yeah, that'd be fun to write Orville novels. And I put it out there. And Twitter immediately exploded. People going, oh, my God, Peter David wants to write Orville novels. I'm going, it's really not a big deal. I mean, it's just me. I've written over 30, at least, Star Trek novels. And I don't think they're planning to do any Orville novels. So it's kind of an empty promise. But that doesn't bother fans. They're taking it and running with it.
But to be fair, Peter David, you are an amazing writer. You have an incredible sense of humor in your writing, and this is one of the things that when I read, like I said, it's reading Strike Zone. There is such humor, page to page. Where in the way that one of my favorite things about that book is how a sentence ends on one page from one scene. And then the next scene, it's another line from a completely different scene, but it fits that last scene. And it just is, yeah, it's just so beautiful the way it's written. To me, in my head, the reason Riker grew the beard was just to annoy Picard. That will always be that little petty tweak, just to be, just that little bit of one. And I don't think of that as a negative thing about Riker or even a negative thing about Picard. I just think of that as just that little thing between people, that little
between a younger brother and an older brother.
Exactly.
Or maybe a nephew and a beloved uncle or something like that.
Exactly.
He just does it to mess with him, but he would never cop to it. Yeah.
But
I love that
I would read. I was gonna say I would read any Orville novel you wrote, but I think Orville producers or whoever, I think we need a Peter David written episode of the TV series.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Yes.
Yeah, I would totally. Well, you know what I'd love to do in an episode of the Orville? Remember Galaxy Quest where they're able to see all their adventures and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would love it if they went to a planet where somehow, in some way, this planet had been following the Orville's adventures. And they're all these incredibly impressive people to this planet. So when they arrive on the planet, they are greeted rapturously and they wind up having a convention to welcome the Orville people. So you have the crew of the Orville at an actual Orville convention, which then all of a sudden horrible things start happening. But why the hell not? But I just love to set it during Orville convention. I think that would be hilarious.
I was actually reading on Reddit. One had made a reference to, referring to all the pop culture references on the Orville, and they had said, what would be really funny is if they started to. Is that if all the aliens on a ship would reference other like alien pop culture to each other as well, and that would be a great thing to have there if they start referencing like throwing lines out to the characters in that and just like
I don't know how in God's name I don't know how in God's name that 300 years from now they know who Kermit the Frog is. That they still have access to the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer video and would be aware of this. How they have such contemporary knowledge and understanding of modern-day references. That could almost be a story in and of itself. How in the world do they know about stuff that happened 3 centuries hence? I mean, especially when they did that one episode where the helmsman clearly had no idea about other real facts in the 20th and 21st centuries, but they know all these other pop culture references. I feel fairly confident in saying that most people have no idea about pop culture references of the 17 and 1800s. If you ask the average person who Spring-Heeled Jack is, they will just stare at you blankly with no clue. It just doesn't really happen. I mean, Jesus Christ, when Paul McCartney showed up on the Grammys, I think it was, people were going on Twitter going, "Who's Paul McCartney?" Which just absolutely stunned me. Because if nothing else, in order to post that on Twitter, they had to be on computer. Look it up! Take 5 seconds to enter Paul McCartney in Google and answer your own damn questions. But I'll give you an example. I was talking to my daughter about Inherit the Wind. She had never heard of it, and she was 14, and she never heard of the Scopes Monkey Trials. I happened to be near a Best Buy, so I asked the guys in there if they had Inherit the Wind. They had never heard of Inherit the Wind. They had never heard of the Scopes Monkey Trials. So if the modern generation doesn't remember stuff from 50, 60 years ago, how is a generation 300 years hence going to know who the hell Kermit the Frog is? But you know what? What the hell? It's his show, and if he wants to toss that in there, I mean, like I said, I probably come up with a whole story just to explain why they know who these contemporary people, whose contemporary references are.
Yeah, but is it just, do you think maybe it's the internet, though? Because, I mean, they didn't have the internet in the 17th century, but,
Right.
Now.
They had books in the 17th century. But again, Paul McCartney. All I'm saying is that people of modern day tend to be oblivious to anything that happened 30, 40 years ago, except what they learn in school. So how more oblivious will they be 300 years from now? They'll be into whatever is contemporary at the time. I mean, there are people of my generation who have no idea who the movie stars of the 1930s and 40s are. I mean, I was watching Jeopardy the other day, and they said this actor's name was Archie Leach before he changed it, and a girl said Clark Gable. I'm going, no, It's Cary Grant, obviously. And another contestant got it, so thank God. But I'm always seeing examples of knowledge gaps. Whenever I watch Jeopardy, there's people there who are 30 years old and are oblivious to answers that I'm coming up with immediately based on pulp culture of stuff that was popular when I was a kid.
Yeah, we actually did nerd out an explanation for this a few episodes ago, which was that after basically, and this is the Star Trek version of it, which is that after the eugenics wars, all that existed were hard copies of things. And you see that in Star Trek First Contact, where they're all huddled around that one last jukebox with songs, because that was the only hard copies of culture left. So obviously these last hard copies of culture were all that carried forward in much the same way that, Shakespeare isn't necessarily the world's greatest writer, but he was super popular. So there were lots of copies of his books out there, And so what continues on is those things that they were just printing out DVDs and Blu-rays of them all the time. Yeah. So that's what happens to survive to the future. That's what defines human culture. Now, yes, 400 years hence, would they be watching Seinfeld? But 800 years hence, would they be quoting Shakespeare?
Who knows?
Yeah.
I'll try to hang around 300 years so I can find out.
Yes, well, that's the plan.
That's your Orville novel. How do they have all these pop culture references?
No, I was saying that. I mean, on the other hand, I realize that my grandchildren, who were born last year, will quite possibly be alive in the year 2099. So they're going to be able to see the years that I was speculating about.
Mm.
Yeah, because I think of that all the time, because I was like, my 4-year-old, I'm like, one day they're going to be like, wait, you had to like put like CDs or some, DVDs or something physical into a machine to watch stuff.
Yeah.
You just didn't.
You didn't have ear jacks? Well,
Exactly. You didn't have telepathic, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. The thing is that my daughters have grown up in a world where computers are standard issue. Mm-hmm. I still remember when computers were introduced into high schools. I was in high school. Our computer was a teletype machine that would connect into the actual computer that was somewhere else through a telephone that we shoved into this pad. And, the stuff that we were able to do was incredibly primitive. I mean, hell, I remember when Pong was cutting edge of video games, and you could only get Pong in some video shop or some truck stop or something. I remember the development of all these things that people now take for absolute granted, which I guess is how our parents feel about television. Our parents were around when television didn't exist.
There you go.
Well, maybe my parents were. Yours were not.
My parents were born in the 40s, so actually, yeah.
I don't want to.
When they were kids, television was just coming in. Yeah.
I don't want to make you feel old. My parents are your age.
I would believe it. Look, you got to understand how it felt for me the very first time that I was in a comic store and a guy walked in for an autographing and told me that he had been reading my stuff since he was a kid. And this guy was in his 20s. And I'm going, holy crap. I've been doing this for that long? Wow. Believe me, I'm used to the concept of getting old. But on the other hand, I've lost so many friends that, including Lynn Wein most recently, that, it's getting old isn't fun, but it beats the alternative.
I mean, I was reading your original Hulk run when I was a teenager. I'm going to be 40 next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. You've influenced my life.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk all night or if you've got places to go.
No, I don't know where to go. I have nothing to do till 8 o'clock.
Okay. So here's a question to ask you. Okay. This was a bit of a controversy recently on the internet between Gail Simone and Fabian Nicieza.
Nicieza.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've only read it. I've never heard it.
Fabian Nicieza. I was once going to a convention. I think it was in Utah, and as my escort and I were up there, this kid comes running up to me and he says, I have to know, is it Fabian Nightsai? And I said, Niciesa. And he said, and is it Bill Sienkiewicz? And I said, Sienkiewicz. And he said, and is it the Submariner? I said, no, it's the Submariner. I told him a couple more things. And then as he turned to leave, I said to the kid, oh, by the way, no, you didn't ask me this, but it's Moon Knigget. And he went, what? And I said, it's pronounced Moon Knigget. And he said, I thought it was Moon Knight. And he said, no, you have to remember he's Egyptian. So, the Egyptian pronunciation. And he went, wow, okay. And he goes running off. And my escort said, you are evil. And I said, oh, just wait. Because I saw the kid running to another group of kids. And he starts telling them the names. And I knew when he got to Moon Knigget because the reaction was like this. They were going, and the kid's going, yes. And I see him pointing at me. And all I could think of was, I hope that eventually he sees Monty Python and the Holy Grail and watches the French Taunters talking about you stupid English kniggets, and then he'll realize where I got that from. But at any rate, yes, Fabian Niciesa and Gail Simony.
Oh, it's
No!
Charlie.
It's Simone, dumbass. No, it's
Hey, I called it continuity for most of my life.
Oh, that's nothing. When I was a kid, I pronounced the character's name Aqua Man because I'd never seen the prefix aqua. And my father was the one who explained it to me. But yes, Gail Simone and Fabian Niciesa are arguing about the nature of Cyclops' force blasts.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, that's what I wanted to know how you come down on it as a.
They're force blasts.
Force blast.
There's no heat.
There's no heat.
There's no heat at all. I know this because I actually asked Stan Lee that many, many years ago. And he said, oh, there's no heat. They're just force blasts. And I said, thanks, Stan. It was just in conversation, which broke me up because this was supposedly settled when a couple of days ago, someone asked Stan that same question again. And Stan told the questioner the same thing that he told me. They were just force blasts. And Fabian brought that forth as proof that he knew what he was talking about. Me, I got screwed up and commented about it, and I said Gail was right, they're force blasts, because my wife had told me that Gail was the one on the force blast side, when in fact it was Fabian. Gail was on the heat part. My understanding is that this is in fact some sort of bizarre freaking game that Gail and Fabian are engaged in that has no real absolute meaning. So I don't honestly care anymore. But, yeah, it's force blast. That's correct.
See, my theory is they're somehow tied to the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak in the grand scheme of things.
That's a great idea. No.
Oh. Man, you got me all excited for 5 seconds there.
2 seconds. No, they have nothing to do with the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak. Sorry.
Okay. Well, you can hope.
But speaking of Moon Knigget, I think I don't know if you remember, but I think it on Wikipedia was saying early on in your career, like when you were first trying to break in the comics, you submitted some Moon Knigget plots. I just wondered if you remembered what any of those were.
No recollection whatsoever. I submitted a Moon Knight plot. I submitted an Indiana Jones plot. I got absolutely nowhere. Because the feeling in those days in Marvel editorial was, if you were creative, you'd be working in Marvel editorial. If you were working in the business side, you were not creative. Because if you were creative, you'd be working in Marvel editorial, QED. My coming in as someone on the business side and breaking over into the editorial side was somewhat unprecedented, completely unprecedented in terms of Marvel. Paul Levitz had already done that on the DC side, but nobody at Marvel had ever made the transition from business into editorial. I was the first.
So are you like the
I'm not saying that to boast anything. I'm just saying that it's fact.
Are you the folk hero now? So like any of the business guys, if they want to write now and they tell us shoot them down, they're like, well, Peter David did it.
Pretty much. I mean, both Fabian Nicieza and Scott Lobdell came to me and said they wanted to break into the writing side of Marvel Comics the way that I had done, which, you know, I was very flattered by.
So folk hero, Peter David.
Yes, he is.
I'd hardly say I'm a folk hero. I'm just the guy, you know, like the eldest son, the one who broke the ice.
Yeah.
You know, and the business and the editorial department saw that bringing in someone who was not originally a writer at Marvel Comics could still result in good sales. I mean, I would never have become a writer if it weren't for Jim Owsley, who was editing Spider-Man at the time.
Kind of switching again. I saw something else on Wikipedia. I really want to ask you this because another favorite character of mine.
Okay.
Does it say you have an idea, but you've never had the opportunity to write Batman, but you have a story idea?
Oh, no, I don't have. Well, I've written Batman from time to time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a particular story idea. I had a scene that I'd like to do in which Robin or somebody, you know, Robin or Dick Grayson or somebody is, you know, confronting Bruce and saying that, you know, Bruce doesn't have any real human emotions anymore and that he can't love or anything. And I'd have Bruce have this total breakdown and talk about how much, you know, he loves his wards and he hates what his life has become, but it has to be done. And tears are pouring down his face. And Robin totally believes him and they embrace. And you see Bruce's face as he's embracing him and it becomes stone cold again. And you realize that the entire breakdown was just to make Robin feel better. It was just something that he manufactured, you know. So I have a really nice idea for a Batman scene, but it's hardly a story.
So just out of curiosity, as a writer, do you often start with that? I mean, like, what do you start with? Do you start with that great scene? Do you start with that great moment? Or do you say, oh, this is a great concept and let's work it down and then build out scenes? I mean,
Yes.
When you're usually working. Okay.
Yes. You have to understand that when you're a writer, people are always saying, I want to become a writer. How do you come up with ideas? And they don't understand that you become a writer because the ideas come to you with such force and frequency that you must write them down in order to get the stories out of your head. You see people walking down the street and they're muttering to themselves. Those guys could well be potentially frustrated writers because they might be coming up with ideas that would be eminently publishable, but they don't have any means of getting them published. Ideas walk into my head in all kinds of ways. And I mean, look, I'll give you an example. Okay. I was watching Superman 4. Okay, you remember that. That was the worst one. Superman is standing in front of the United Nations and he says, I have decided to get rid of all nuclear weapons. And the following goes through my head in an instant. I'm picturing the United Nations going, excuse me? You're going to what? And he says, I'm going to get rid of all nuclear weapons. And they're going, you can't do that. Those are all nuclear weapons. You can't touch them. And Superman says, well, I'm sorry, but I've given this a lot of thought and I'm going to have to get rid of all your nuclear weapons. And the United Nations says, you put a finger on any of our nuclear weapons and we're going to declare war on you. And Superman goes, well, I'm really sorry you feel that way, but I'm getting rid of all the nuclear weapons. And now the United States and the United Nations are all freaking out. And they're going, we have to stop Superman. Who the hell can we get to stop Superman? The answer, of course, is obvious. Lex Luthor. and they bring in Lex Luthor and are willing to pardon him for all his previous crimes if he will come up with a way of stopping Superman from getting rid of all the nuclear weapons. So now the rest of this movie is going to be the world at war with Superman, with Lex Luthor as the potential savior of the human race. Holy crap! This is going to be amazing! All of this went through my head in a second. In the next second, everyone in the United Nations jumps up and goes, "Yay!" And I went, oh my God. Oh my freaking God. And the whole world applauds Superman, and he gets rid of all the nuclear weapons, which would never in a million freaking years happen. But boy, that'd be a great Superman story, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah,
You know?
I mean, hey, Superman,
if they did that in the comics.
Superman accomplishes his goal of bringing about world peace because the world teams up against Superman.
Yeah. Holy crap. How exciting would that be? I even did a story where I was watching the first Superman movie. And I thought about it and I said, wow, it's amazing that Lois Lane survived being a teenager. Because when Superman begins, first he saves her from being shot in an alleyway, and then he saves her from falling to her death from a helicopter. How in God's name did she survive to becoming a teenager? Survive being a teenager. And all this other stuff is happening in Metropolis the same night that Superman shows up, including that Air Force One is in trouble. He saves Air Force One. And I wondered, how the hell did the Daily News pick their first page story for the next day, considering all the crap that Superman averted? And then I started to think about it, and I said, none of this stuff happened before Superman showed up. That's pretty freaking weird. And I came up with the notion that Superman had a power he didn't even know that he had. His very presence affects fate so that he is always needed, because he has major abandonment issues because he was shot away from his homeworld. So now, whenever he goes somewhere, shit happens so that he will be needed. And I realized that I could never write that as a Superman story because that's the end of the DC character. He would realize that, what had happened, he would go off to the Arctic Circle and never interact with anyone ever again. So I wound up writing it as a short story, creating a Superman-esque character called the Archetype. And I wrote the short story, and I sent it off to the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. And 2 weeks later, they sent back a check. I'm going, okay. And they ran my could not possibly be done Superman story as a short story in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, which I thought was freaking hilarious. And of course, the punchline is, at the end of the story, he goes off to Antarctica so that no one will ever need him again and he won't cause any disaster. And in the meantime, the hole in the ozone layer starts widening even more.
Please go Black Cat, bad luck powers.
Yeah.
So just to the Superman movies, just because it is a point of constant contention between me and my co-hosts, what do you think of Superman 3?
The original Superman 3?
Superman 3. Is it the best Superman of the series, or simply one of the very best? You can see where I fall on that debate.
Superman 3 was terrible. I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you.
It was terrible.
He loves that movie for some reason.
Superman 1 was good.
Mm-hmm.
Superman 2 was somewhat better.
Mm-hmm.
Although both of them had incredibly dumbass plot resolutions. I mean, the first one, he spun the world backwards. He did what? In the second one, he kissed Lois away out of the memory that he was Superman.
And he has that
and somehow in the fight against the Kryptonians, he threw a super frisbee out of his chest.
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell was that stuff about? So both of them were very good. Both of them had really dumbass things. Superman 3 the Richard Pryor one?
That was the Richard Pryor one.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
Where his villain's power was super wealth, where kryptonite where kryptonite makes him morally weak, and where he has to face his own question of who is the real Superman, Kal-El or Clark Kent.
Let me put it to you.
Yeah.
Let me put it to you this way. I remember the entire plot of Superman 1. I remember the entire plot of Superman 2. I remember nothing of Superman 3 except for the poster. So that alone should tell you where I fall on this subject.
Yeah, get him, Peter.
Fair enough. I still love that movie.
Hey, people are gonna love what they love. I mean, people ask me what's my favorite comic book movie, and I always say the same thing: The Phantom. And there are people who go, The Phantom? Are you out of your mind? I'm going, I love The Phantom. They had me from the moment where it said for those who came in late. I mean, you know. And then when they had Billy Zane walking around with his shirt off, and you're going, oh my God, this guy's really ripped. He doesn't have to have artificial muscles built into his costume. This guy's got a six-pack, and he's really built. Wow. Okay. So I loved The Phantom. That was my favorite comic book movie. Then again, people ask me what my favorite science fiction movie is, and I always say The Truman Show. Which it is.
Yeah. I liked
Anything
it,
else?
except there was a Twilight Zone episode that like predates it by like a decade. That was essentially the exact same concept. Aside from that, it was good. Yeah, but it's not. No, but it was a great movie length variation on that concept.
Yeah,
and I liked. No, Truman Show was fantastic. No one's going to argue that the Truman Show was not a great show, a great piece.
True. Anything else you want to know about?
All right, I got one more question. You were talking about your archetype character and all that.
I want to read that short story now.
Yeah, I want to read that too. But no, your
good luck.
Yeah, your second Captain Marvel series where he goes nuts and all that is that like a progression like from like that archetype story, or did that come from somewhere completely different?
Oh no, that came about me thinking about the whole aspect of cosmic awareness. And it all really hinged on a very simple concept. If with great power comes great responsibility, with too much power could come too much responsibility. And I basically just came up with the notion of, what if he has so much power that he has absolutely no idea how to use it responsibly, and it overloads his mind and he just completely freaks out. And that's where Captain Marvel going insane came from. The notion that he did the best he could, but it wasn't enough. And oh my God, what are you going to do if you're a superhero and you become hit with the notion that no matter what you do, it's not going to be enough, that things are going to go badly. And Captain Marvel just went completely nuts. Now, the reason I came up with that story was because we were going to be restarting the series. For reasons I'm not going to even bother to go into. And my artist was Chris Cross. And I thought to myself, what are Chris's strengths? And I realized that his storytelling wasn't that good. But the main thing that Chris was really good at was having people look that they were out of their freaking minds. Everybody. Rick looked like he was nuts. Marv looked like he was nuts. They all looked crazy. And I thought to myself, I know what I'll do. I would do this story and have Captain Marvel go nuts, because that's going to be right in Chris's wheelhouse. And indeed it was. For the 6 issues that Chris drew, Captain Marvel looked deliriously insane.
Oh, yeah.
And it was wonderful. And then Chris left the book, and I still had about 15 issues to do of the storyline. And the subsequent artists had their own strengths and their own weaknesses, but none of them could make Captain Marvel look insane the way that Chris could. And the problem was that fans then started complaining, and they're going, well, I don't like this insane story anymore. Of course they didn't like it. It was being written for an artist whose strengths would have made it work, but he was gone off the book. So, I did the best I could, and eventually I resolved the story so he wasn't insane anymore. But if Chris had stayed on the book, people would have loved it for the whole series.
That's awesome. All right. That's it for me. Charlie, do you have anything else?
Yeah.
No, I am full out of questions.
Okay.
Sir, this has been an honor and a privilege to speak with you.
Thank you very much.
No, I mean, you were one of the greats of comic books, and I'm glad we got this.
Yes, I was. I now am not, but I was.
Oh, you still are.
Well, no, you still.
I mean,
I appreciate that.
Everyone
getting greater every day. There we go.
Everyone, go out and buy Ben Reilly, The Scarlet Spider. I love that every issue. Go pick up the his Peter's Aquaman stuff in trade paperback. Give him a nice Christmas bonus.
Works for me. Oh, they're collecting all my stuff now. Thanks to the Supergirl TV series, they're collecting all my Supergirl books. Oh, so Supergirl, wow, I'm really happy about that. To see all my stuff that's been lying fallow for years suddenly showing up as trade paperbacks. Hooray!
What do you think of the Supergirl TV show?
Oh, I love it. I think it's absolutely great. I love that in the very first episode they basically quoted a line of dialogue. Where when Wynn says to her, "Oh my God, you're gay," and she says, "I'm not gay, I'm that girl."
Yes.
Which is exactly what I had Linda saying to her parents.
Yes.
When she was trying to tell them that she was Supergirl, and one of my favorite scenes I ever wrote, in which her mother says, "Oh my God, you're gay," and her father says, "You're not gay. You just haven't met the right guy yet. There's a guy in the Vice Squad I want you to meet." And she goes, "I'm not gay. I'm Supergirl."
That's right.
And they're going, "What?" And then she suddenly levitated, turned into Supergirl, and ripped her shirt open. And her parents are like, "Oh my God!" So that was fun stuff. But all my stuff is being collected by DC, so I appreciate that. So. Buy my Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider. Also, I'm going to be doing a Babylon. I'm doing a Babylon 5. No, not Babylon. I'm doing a Battlestar Galactica limited series. Have you heard about that?
No.
I did not hear, but now we're selling it.
It was announced at the New York Comic Con. I'm doing a Battlestar Galactica comic book series being published by Dynamite. It is crossing over the 1978 Battlestar Galactica crew with the 21st Century crew created by Ron Moore.
Wow.
It's the first time any comic book series has ever done that. I am absolutely thrilled. And yes, I will answer the question that everybody's asking me. Starbuck is going to sleep with Starbuck.
Yes.
I want the cover to that issue to be both of them lying in bed, next to each other, both of them smoking cigars.
That is already on the pull list.
Okay.
Anything else you want to promote, Mr. David? Peter?
I have a Patreon account. So if people want to support me and see stuff that I'm doing that they are not going to see anybody else, they have to go to my Patreon account. Currently, for one level, I don't remember, it's the $10 level, I am running my screenplay that I wrote for a Space Ghost movie that I wrote for Hanna-Barbera many, many years ago, that they absolutely loved, and they sent on to Turner Broadcasting saying, "We want to do this as a movie," because Turner owned them at the time. And Turner came back and said, "We do not want to do the Space Ghost movie, period." They didn't comment on the script, which Hanna-Barbera loved. They just said, "No Space Ghost movie." So if you want to read my Space Ghost origin movie, go join my Patreon account.
Nice.
Okay.
All right. Well, we've taken up way too much of your time, sir. But so thank you so much. Thank you. Said, this has been a great honor. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Take care, guys.
Take care, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. How do I stop this?
I can do it.
There we go.
Oh my God, that was such a great interview.
That was fantastic. Well, he did most of the work.
Charlie, how do you feel? A titan of comics and TV and science fiction in general called you a dumbass. How do you feel?
Oh, it feels like every day of my life. That's
I know, but a great man called you a dumbass.
Yeah, Yeah, well, when
interview.
someone calls you a dumbass, it doesn't matter if they're a great man or a small man. It just matters that you're a dumbass.
It was just playful. Oh my god.
Oh no. Trust me. This was good. And here's what I'll say.
Yes.
I didn't bring it up in the interview, but he did say 3 is not the worst.
Yeah, but he said it's not the best either. He said
doesn't matter.
Not the best either.
Doesn't matter. It's not the best. It's not the worst. 4 was worse. So 3's okay.
Splitting hairs here. Splitting hairs.
Hey, that's why we have hairs to split them. Oh.
Wow.
Goodness.
I think that might be our longest interview ever on Capes and Lunatics, and it was worth it.
Very much. Well, you know what? I'm glad he wanted to sit and talk. Honestly, it was great. It was worth it to me. And I hope all you folks out there in podcast. Honestly, I don't know I know that I ran out of questions, until he said, "Nah, I'm here till 8 o'clock. I got nothing to do." Like, okay, well, and then we vamped, and I think the vamping worked, and it was great. And hopefully your long commute is almost over.
Your commute to Hawaii. Yeah, I mean, I hit most of my questions. I was going to start getting into it. Well, in issue 339 of The Incredible Hulk, why did you? But no, I mean, I could have kept going, but I love it. I mean, we got to talk Hulk, Spider-Man, we got to talk Orville. That's the campaign we need to start. He needs to write an episode of the Orville.
Yeah. I wanted to ask him if there was some tension between him and McFarlane. Because he worked with McFarlane for a long time, and then he made the thing that McFarlane added the tongue,
Yes.
I don't want to poke that bear. I don't want to make this. I hit the guy hard with Lockjaw and Hulk can breathe underwater. I don't want to pull that thread too hard, but maybe in the next interview we can discuss whether or not there's any. Maybe we can stoke a feud between David and McFarlane. Start our own Twitter war. That'll be fun.
Oh, and Peter David, the first man to write the Thunderbolts, they first appeared in Incredible Hulk. What was it, 449?
Oh yeah, the man has left his thumbprint on pretty much everything great in comics. Doing Dynamite now, and honestly, does that not sound amazing?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just cross-time shenanigans with the 2 variations on Battlestar Galactica. I wonder if he's going to point out the fact that putting the Secretary of Education in charge of your country is stupid when your country is now a set of ships, and the captain of the ship is the one in charge. Because at any time, the captain of the ship can say, "Well, we could just eject you out into space to Secretary of Education."
Maybe we need to. Once that comes out, we'll have to contact him again. Like, you want to come on and talk Battlestar Galactica?
Yeah, well, it's on the pull list, man. I tell you what, I'm gonna have so few Marvel books on my pull list after interviewing all these writers who are writing Marvel books, and I'm like, oh, I want to read. It's like already I got Bitterroot. I'm gonna get the new Planet of the Apes from David Walker about the origin of, and I'm forgetting the name of the Guerrilla General who's the villain. And now I've got this Battlestar Galactica thing, man. Podcasting is ruining my Marvel cred.
I want that Death miniseries.
Oh, well, yeah, I wonder if they're going to make him make life Gaia.
Oh.
And then, and then Thor comes in and it's like, "Hey, Ma, how you been?"
All right, let's get out of here.
So let me get my social media, superconnectivityblog at gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. And of course, follow me on Twitter. I live tweet the Orville at CharlieSO.CHARLIEESSER. Look for 2 E's in the middle for quality.
All right, and as for the Capes and Lunatics, I can get a hold of us, capesandlunatics@gmail.com. Voicemail, quick and easy, 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And if you want to do a interview, if you're a creator, if you're a cosplayer, if you're a musician, well, whoever, get a hold of me, just like the great Peter David, nightwingpdp@gmail.com. And on Twitter, I am at nightwingpdp. And if you're watching on YouTube, join us tomorrow, 9 a.m. for Capes and Lunatics, followed by Super Connectivity.
And I'm going to start tweeting at Seth MacFarlane, see if we can get him on the show.
Yes!
Just annoy him until he blocks me.
Annoying. everyone within the sound of my voice, annoy Seth MacFarlane until he gives Peter David a paying job writing for an episode of the Orville. All right, I guess that's it. Any final thoughts, dumbass?
I got to pee.
Me too. But it was worth it.
It was worth it. It was worth it. The kidney stones are worth it.
Oh my god, that was so great. Hey, any other great, especially Titans of Industry comics, please contact us. See? We can handle famous comics. Oh, I mean, who could? I'm just trying to think. Who could we get that would be better than Peter David? Stan Lee?
No, be great. I'll take him. I'll take Stan Lee. You know, Stan Lee, I think you got to pay nowadays.
Oh, I'm sure. Hey,
yeah.
He's earned it. But,
Yeah, no, he's earned it. No, honestly, if we win the lottery tonight, we're paying the appearance fee to Stan Lee.
Yes.
Got my Mega Millions.
Or people can just send us millions to interview Stan Lee. And that's it. Good night.